Hello and welcome to The World This Week with Tanya Francis. A look back at some of the biggest global news stories for an international city, brought to you by the London Live News team. Tonight, the week the world saw the miraculous rescue of a young deaf and dumb boy who fell into a well and was trapped for over 100 hours. Extreme flooding closes the Yellowstone Park in Wyoming, forcing out 10,000 visitors and submerging houses and roads. And the Queen's favourite horse race meeting took place this week. We'll take a look at some of the most standout outfits from across the week. Well, that's all on the way before 7:30, but first, there was hope on the horizon for Ukraine as 4 world leaders visited the country and pledged it should be given immediate membership to the European Union. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy and Romania made their first visit to war-torn Ukraine since Russia invaded on the 24th of February. During their visit, President Volodymyr Zelensky urged them to send more weapons and impose tougher sanctions on Russia.
The vast majority of missiles were aimed at civilian targets. With all this information, I outlined our priority defence needs. We appreciate the support already provided from partners, and we expect new supplies of heavy weapons, modern multiple rocket launcher systems, missile defence systems, etc. Each consignment of such supplies has rescued Ukrainian lives.
Now, since that meeting, French President Emmanuel Macron pledged more long-range artillery for Ukraine. Now, although there may have been a feeling of hope and unity after meetings in the capital, it was a very different story in Lysychansk, as the town was shaken by Russian rockets.
I was at home. I heard the explosion, ashes and dust. There was a column of dust going up. I heard someone cry, terrible cries. I ran here and saw only ruins and bodies. They were carried away on stretchers. I don't know. Some of them were alive, some were dead. I can't remember what was here, what was there. Holy Mother.
Rescue workers searched the rubble for survivors, with at least 4 people dead and many others injured as rockets hit the cultural centre in this town in the east of Ukraine. The battle for control for this part of the country has become the focus of Russian attacks in recent weeks.
I don't know how to put it into words. People are afraid. This is war. It is scary. There is no communication. You cannot go out anywhere. There is no place to go.
Now to the USA, where heavy rain and vast amounts of melted snow have caused disastrous flash flooding. The park has had to temporarily close as houses have been washed away and roads and bridges submerged. The Yellowstone River is the highest it's ever been, with officials saying the climate crisis and an increase in global temperatures have caused the flood and could lead to more rainfall and rapid snowmelt as we enter into the summer months. At any one time, there can be up to 10,000 visitors to the area. Park officials have said that everyone has been evacuated, including 10 rescue operations, but there's still a lot of work to be done to keep people safe.
This is going to be an ongoing process. It's hard to see exactly. The water is still up high in a lot of places. Lots and lots of folks experiencing lots of extensive damage, and that's going to remain to be seen in the days to come. As far as duration, we're in for the long haul. As far as helping folks, we'll do everything that we have to do to provide those resources, and just continue to work through what is a pretty tragic event for all of Park County.
Now let's head to South America, where hundreds of fish have died after a truck carrying 34 tons of zinc fell into one of the country's main rivers, close to the capital of Lima. The zinc darkened the water in the Chillon River, with officials estimating around 500 tons of trout will be lost due to contamination. Well, Miguel Pastrana, a trout farmer manager, has said it's hard to tell how bad the fish population will be affected.
The authorities, as you can see, have just arrived, and they're doing their respective analyses to see the levels of contamination in the products, in the trout, and apparently they will present a report later on to reveal the levels of contamination.
Well, it could be a tricky process to quantify how bad the damage is, as the fish will not show any initial symptoms.
Fish will not show any symptoms. However, humans consuming zinc-contaminated fish, meaning fish that have ingested zinc, can develop health problems.
To Tunisia now, where a nationwide strike saw hundreds of thousands of people out on the street in protest against some of the president's economic policies.
We as citizens, as public sector employees, are burdened with a great part of the charges of state debt.
Well, it was announced by the UGTT, Tunisia's most powerful union, with an estimated 3 million people taking part and protesting against the government's plans for a wage freeze and a cut in subsidies.
This strike has been called to put pressure on the government, to support us, and for a national dialogue, of course. Unfortunately, the government does not want to have a dialogue with us, so we were obliged to do this.
Flights in and out of Tunisia were halted and transport throughout the country was grounded. Many now concerned that Thursday's strike action could seriously impact an already fragile economy. Now to India, where a 10-year-old boy was rescued after he fell down an 80-foot well as he played football in his family's backyard. Unable to speak or hear, Rahul Sahu is both deaf and dumb, which makes this rescue mission even more miraculous. He spent 104 hours trapped underground in a muddy well, which he shared with a snake and a frog, according to the chief minister of the state, who tweeted about it. Well, Rahul fell into something called a bore well, which is a deep, narrow tunnel drilled into the ground to pump water out. There have been around 40 children who have fallen into bore wells since 2009, and it's usually a fatal accident because of the low levels of oxygen. But in this case, it was a happy ending for Rahul and his family. Now let's bring you this from Georgia.
It's amazing and crazy in the same time. It's like strong. It's strong. Like it's not going to fall, and you feel the bike. You feel this here. You feel everything, and when you're looking down, it's. I don't know what to say. It's amazing.
This is not one for anyone with vertigo. This week, this pretty incredible structure was opened to the public in Georgia. It's a 240-metre-long glass bridge with a diamond-shaped cafe in the middle. It looks over the Salka Canyon in the south of Georgia and cost just under $41 million to make. Not one for the faint-hearted, but definitely one for the adrenaline junkies, as much of the bridge is made from glass panels. And you can see people gingerly walking across and even cycling across, suspended above the canyon for a zip-line bike ride.
The idea to realise this challenging and beautiful project came because since 2014 in the world there has been an increased interest towards ecotourism, and since 2019 in Georgia also there is an increased demand towards wilderness areas. This was the inspiration to realise this beautiful project. This project is the best example of how we managed to preserve the authenticity of nature, and at the same time, we offer visitors a different and extreme ecotourism area, and of course, it's very secure.
Well, there you have it. The World This Week continues after the break. I'm sure if you've been to New York, you'll recognise these. We'll be headed to the Big Apple as the city subway says goodbye to some of its oldest and most well-known carriages. Hello and welcome back. You're watching The World This Week from the London Live News team, a review of the main international stories that have broken over the last 7 days. Still to come before 7:30. Italy is experiencing the worst drought in 70 years, with the country's biggest river now nearly a sandbox. But first, to the UK, where this week a flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda was cancelled minutes before takeoff after a last-minute intervention from the European Court of Human Rights. Up to 7 people had been expected to be removed as part of the Rwanda Asylum Plan, a scheme announced by the government in April to send asylum seekers who attempted to cross the Channel to East Africa. The UK government have said that they hope the scheme would discourage people from trying to illegally cross the English Channel. Well, let's take an in-depth look at exactly how and why the European Court of Human Rights stopped the flight. Alicia Edwards has this report.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
The European Court of Human Rights is an international court set up in 1959 to rule on alleged violations of the civil and political rights set out in the European Convention on Human Rights. Its judgments are binding on the 46 councils of European member states that have ratified the Convention. It is not a European Union institution, and Brexit has not affected the UK's relationship with it. In a last-ditch intervention, an interim measure was granted by the court in the case of an Iraqi asylum seeker who was due to be on the first flight to Rwanda on Tuesday night. They said he should not be sent to Rwanda until a full decision on the legality of the government's policy has been reached in the domestic courts. A full High Court review of the policy, which will see some asylum seekers sent on a one-way trip to Rwanda, is expected in July. In its ruling, the court acknowledged concerns about access to fair and efficient procedures for the determination of refugee status in Rwanda, the fact that the African country is not part of the European human rights framework, and the absences of any legally enforceable mechanism to return asylum seekers to the UK if there is a successful legal challenge to the policy. The Prime Minister has not ruled out potentially leaving the convention entirely ahead of the injunction, but leaving the court would be a significant step which could have major knock-on effects on other international agreements, including the Good Friday Agreement. Remaining signed up to the ECHR also helps ensure judicial and legal cooperation with the EU under the terms of the Brexit deal.
Well, following the decision to pull the flight, Home Secretary Priti Patel said that she was disappointed and said that preparations for the next flight were underway. Now to Brazil, where a suspect has admitted to killing British journalist Dom Phillips and an indigenous expert Bruno Pereira in the Amazon rainforest in western Brazil. Police investigators have said the suspect had confessed to fatally shooting them and allegedly dismembering the men's bodies and setting them on fire.
We did all the crime reenactment with the justice authorization and all registered in video. It was realised following an international methodology, and then we went to the place where he said he had buried the bodies and where he had hired the boat. He sank the boat as the investigations was showing us.
Dom Phillips, who has reported on news in Brazil for more than 15 years, was a freelance journalist and was working with 41-year-old Brazilian Mr. Pereira on a project in the rainforest trying to combat illegal fishing in indigenous territory. They were last seen in the Javari Valley, which borders Peru and Colombia.
From now on, we enter in this next stage, the identification stage of these bodies that are being collected with dignity, and trying to preserve the evidence chain of custody, which is very important. These human remains will be sent tomorrow to our National Institute of Criminalistics in Brasilia.
Well, the announcement marks a grim turn in a case that has raised global alarm. To Spain now, where they battled a huge forest fire in the northeast of the country. Helicopters dropped water from above and firemen tackled it on the ground as over 300 military personnel worked to dampen the blaze. Well, on Thursday, over 500 hectares. For size, that's nearly 1,000 football pitches, had been burnt. Now, although the fires in the region at this time of year are common, officials have said that they believe it was started on purpose. It was one of several forest fires that has hit Spain as a sweltering heat wave continues to engulf the country. Now to Sudan, where this week the UN Food Agency announced 15 million people are at risk of starvation. A global food crisis that needs a global solution.
WFP Sudan has just completed its food security assessment. Unfortunately, our worst fears have been confirmed. We estimate at this point in time that some 15 million people are going hungry in Sudan. Our projections for later in the year indicate that this might be increasing to some 18 million people. The main drivers behind food insecurity in Sudan are the economic crisis, conflict, a poor harvest, and now also the global impact and the fallout of the crisis in Ukraine.
Well, the report has also outlined how tribal clashes are also contributing to the issue. Badria was a market vendor who has been affected by the worsening situation in Sudan.
The reason for these high prices is the conflict. It's similar to what happened in Tawala when they killed people and looted their belongings. When we first came here, we received help, but that's now stopped. If I manage to sell something, I can eat. If I don't make enough money, I go to bed hungry. Other than that, we don't have anything.
Living conditions across the country have deteriorated late last year when a military coup sent an already fragile economy into freefall, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine compounding the economic pain. The UN are now reaching out to the global community to outline the severity of the situation. Now to Italy, where they are experiencing the worst drought for more than 70 years. Sun-scorched banks of the River Po are the result of more than 110 days with no rain and snowfall down by 70%. Well, officials and the locals are worried about the supply of drinking water drying up and how they're going to water their crops, with Italy's largest river, the Po in Barretto, turning into a sandpit.
We are in a situation where the river flow here is approximately 300 cubic metres per second. Normally in this area we have almost 1,800, so we are now down to 1/6. We haven't seen such a crisis in 70 years. From the beginning of scientific statistical measurement 70 years ago, we never had such data.
Now, many of the foods that we enjoy from Italy come from the valleys around the river. Wheat, high-quality tomatoes and renowned grapes are all grown in what's known as the Italian Food Valley, and their production is under threat. Well, the fields are irrigated using water pumped from the river, but with its levels going down by 20 centimetres a day, the pumps are now at risk of not being able to draw water.
We believe that there will be a drop in wheat productivity by at least 20% or more due to the lack of rain and irrigation.
To pump the water up the valley from further away or transport it from another region requires a lot of gas or diesel, and officials are worried about the increased levels of pollution this will cause and the cost, with there already being a financial burden with the war in Ukraine, increasing the price of raw materials such as diesel and fertilizer. Now to the USA, and if you've ever been to New York, you might recognise one of these, but they won't be around for long. That's an R32 subway car that was put into service in the 1960s, with millions of people using them to commute and explore the city.
It represents to me a change that after the pandemic, we're moving ahead with our society. We're changing out some of the cars that needed to be changed. We're bringing in the new improved cars.
Well, the R179s are the new kids on the block, or the track rather. The old R32s will be floated away to Jersey and turned into scrap metal. Well, for many years, outdated subway cars were sunken to the bed of the Atlantic Ocean to create an artificial reef. But these stainless steel trains would collapse with the seawater, and so they're being used for scrap metal instead. Now, to an image that went viral this week. Here it is. Yes, that's Ryan Gosling, who you'll recognise from films like Drive and The Notebook. But this time, he's donned some blonde locks for his role as Ken in Warner Brothers' upcoming film Barbie. Well, we don't have a trailer yet, but Gosling will star alongside Margot Robbie as Barbie and a host of other famous people, bringing the story of the plastic children's dolls, or Barbies, to life. But you're going to have to wait, as the film is not going to hit our cinema screens until July 2023. Well, that's all from The World This Week with me, Tanya Francis. We'll see you at 7 next Saturday as we round up the biggest international stories for a global city. But to finish off the show, it was obviously Royal Ascot this week, the annual horse racing which attracts people from around the world to watch the finest racehorses compete for millions of pounds in prize money. But there were also some million-dollar outfits there, so I'll leave you with some of them and you can decide if it's a yay or a nay. Enjoy.
Was the Queen's Jubilee. So it's made of plastics and it's hand-shaped and heated and then obviously dyed.
It's a tribute to the Queen, inspired by her headscarf that she always loves to wear.
Oh, seeing what everybody's wearing, seeing what all the ladies have on, looking at all the beautiful hats and great outfits and the handsome, handsome gentlemen in their top hats.